In 1911, Pancho Villa led rebel forces during the Mexican Revolution. North of the border, John Browning introduced the Colt 45. 1911 saw the first use of aircraft as offensive weapons during the Turkish-Italian War, and the United States Navy ordered its first airplane, the Curtiss A-1. In 1911, Ray Haroon reached speeds of almost 75 miles per hour as he won the inaugural Indianapolis 500. Federal spending in 1911 topped $500 million, and a first-class stamp cost 2 cents. And demonstrators in New York City demanded that women be granted the right to vote. Across the country in Seattle, the fishing vessel Tordenskjold slid down the ways at a little shipyard in the Scandinavian community of Ballard. Of all the events that transpired 100 years ago, the Tordenskjold is one that endures. Remarkably, as she celebrates her centennial, she is neither relic nor museum piece. The Tordenskjold leads a small fleet of hard-working commercial fishing schooners that compete head-to-head with modern boats on the Alaska fishing grounds. Marvin Jurdy has owned and operated the Tordenskjold since 1979. He's still making a living with his century-old boat.
Yeah, and make a good living at it. You know, they're efficient boats. They're fairly inexpensive to operate. You know, they're easily driven so you don't burn a lot of fuel. Boats 75 feet overall, 19-foot beam. One of the deeper boats of that size draws about 12 and a half feet. It's built in Seattle by John Strand, same guy that built the Polaris, he built the Vance, he built the Republic.
Nobody is quite sure how many of the historic schooners are left.
I was told there were 100 schooners in Seattle. And now I think we're in the Seattle area that I know of, we're down to about 20. There's a few here and there, a couple in California, a few in Alaska, but I don't believe there's 30 left.
John McHenry owns the Seymour, which targets halibut and sablefish, just like the Tordenskjold and her sisters. An anomaly in the clannish halibut fishery, an Irishman from Pennsylvania. McHenry has been a fisherman for 36 years. For McHenry, operating a 98-year-old boat is no hobby.
It's not really a form of nostalgia that's kept the Seymour going. It's still a very safe, effective platform to catch our fish. At first glance, it would appear as though to be a dinosaur. But we'll be out with modern boats competing neck and neck, and when we pull up to the fuel dock, we usually win that contest.
Anomalies like McHenry aside, halibut fishing has always been a family affair.
You know, especially the boats in the Seattle fleet here all of them are second or third generation. You know, it's a family-run business, family-oriented, small business. It gets handed down from father to son to next son, and it kind of stays in the family. It's you know, the history on this dock is amazing when you really think about it.
Like many of his counterparts, Jack Knutson was born into the halibut fishery. Knutson's father had built the Resolute in 1926. In 1931, he bought the Grant.
Well, I started fishing with my dad in 1954, and then he retired in 1960, and my older brother and I got together. He said, well, maybe we can talk the old man into giving it to us. And he says, my brother looks at me, you ask him. And I said, no, you ask him. He finally, because we were both pretty intimidated by him. And so the next morning I got together with the old man and we started talking about sailing. I said, you wouldn't consider giving the boat to us, would you? And he looks at me with this, you couldn't possibly be my son with a stupid question like that. And he says, nobody ever gave me this boat, and I'm not giving you the blankety blank boat either. You got first right to buy it at the market price and take it or leave it. We'll take it.
Per Odegaard owns and operates the Vancy. He started longline fishing in 1967.
Well, she's an 87-foot halibut schooner, traditional wooden schooner built out of fir, sawn fir frames, old growth timber, obviously. These boats were heavily built. That's one of the reasons they lasted so long. It's very similar to sailboat style, as you see the lines of it. The sister ship, the Polaris, there's a picture of them where they're built side by side, and you can really, when you see the bottom, you really see the round kind of sailboat, traditional Gloucester, East Coast sailboat lines, which they were modeled after. Which obviously they're very good sea boats. They've taken weather for 90-some years. I was in a tail end of a tropical typhoon one time. You had 50-foot waves. We're loaded with about 80-some thousand pounds of halibut at the time.
Seattle boat builder Andrew Berg built David Kelly's Arrow in 1924.
The wheelhouse is still original. The midship bulwarks are still original. Wood, in other words, not galvanized or aluminum. We still have 2 wooden masts. I think we're probably the only boat in the fleet with those left.
Wade Bassey is another vestige of the old ways.
I was sitting on the deck of the Polaris up on the bow of it. It was built in 1913, so it's getting close to 100 years here pretty soon.
The Polaris is sister ship to the Vancy. They were literally cut from the same trees.
When they cut the ribs, we got the inside part and he got the outside part, so he's about a foot and a half wider than we are.
Good trees they were. The old-growth fir reaped from Pacific Northwest forests. The Tordenskjold is planked with 2 1/4-inch fir on frames sawn from old-growth trees.
They had really, really good carpenters, and they had really, really good material to work with. I don't know how far they had to get the vertical grain fir that she was built with, and it was just the finest material you could possibly use. Yeah, some of the later ones they used bent oak frames with boats like the Tordenskjold and the Polaris. There were actually double-sawed 8x8 frames that they used all vertical grain fir.
I don't think you could afford to build a boat like this anymore, because you just couldn't. Not only could you not get the materials, it would be so expensive to do that it wouldn't be worth doing.
In significant ways, the Seymour is much the same as when it came off the ways in 1913. In other regards, it is significantly different.
The basic hull is very similar. So below the waterline, the keel, bow stem, horn timber, the real guts of the boat, the frames. As you get above the waterline, under the bulwarks, the wheelhouse has been changed. It's a modern aluminum wheelhouse. The masts are now aluminum. Has a modern diesel engine. I'm sure when those guys drug that lumber down to that boat, horse-drawn wagons in 1913, they'd have no idea this boat would be fishing with a computer on it. All the modern navigational devices, watch alarms, all the stuff.
It's built after over Norwegian design. Schooner basically means 2 masts. So it's double-masted. It is deep. It's like 12 feet under the water, so she rolls a lot, but she's long and narrow, so she cuts really well through the water. Funny thing is that this boat you're standing on right now, it's almost 100 years old, and it's probably a better sea boat than most of the new ones built today.
They may not be the most comfortable boat all the time, because they do roll a lot, and they do pitch, and they do all of that stuff, and some of them are kind of quick on the stern, and one thing and another, but you don't have to worry about whether you're going to come back on them or not. And we've been lucky to have pretty good people working on these, working on these boats in the shipyard all these years too.